All right, today on Musician's Edition, we are looking at number 56 in our essential elements on the keyboard side of the book. And this is Old MacDonald Had a Band. So when we look through this piece, as is the case with a lot of the keyboard pieces that we play, sticking is going to be a really crucial thing to consider in this piece. We also, obviously, before we start, we want to look at our key signature and our time signature. Okay, our time signature is 4/4, like we've been doing for a good little chunk of this book. And our key signature is the same that we had on the last page as well. So we have a B flat and an E flat in our key signature, right? So make sure anytime you see a B, which is the middle line of treble clef, you're going to play a B flat, right? And anytime you see an E, which is going to be the top space of our staff in this piece, you're going to play an E flat, okay? All right, so we got B flat and E flat, and then we're going to look through the notes and think about what kind of stickings we're going to use. Now, sometimes when we have a bunch of the same note all in a row, sometimes we'll want to alternate our hands and play right, left, right? Or sometimes we might want to play all of those on one hand. And a lot of times that just depends on two things. One, how fast those notes are going by, whether or not it's practical to play them all with one hand. And then the other one is going to be what comes after those notes, right? If we have a big jump after those notes, it might make a lot of sense to play them on one hand. That way our other hand has time to move to the next notes, okay? So in this piece, we have at least one example of both of those different choices that we got to make, which will give us a really good chance to discuss some of those things as we move through this piece, okay? So let's look at the first little phrase, the first little short clip of notes in this piece, which is going to give us the first two measures, right? You notice we start on an E flat, and then we play that E flat 3 times in a row, then we make a jump to a B flat, right? And because they're quarter notes, as long as the piece isn't going too fast, we can play all 3 of those with the same hand, right? And since in this passage of the piece, the E flat is the highest note that we have, we're going to play it with our right hand, right? Because remember, a lot of times when we're making sticking decisions, we want to try to put our right hand on the highest note of a passage and our left hand on the lowest note. Doesn't always work that way, but it's a good starting point to try to make things work well logistically for your hands, right? And to increase our chances of being really accurate with the notes. All right, so let's go ahead and assume we're going to play those 3 E flats on our right hand. So then the first note that our left hand is going to play is going to be the B flat on beat 4, right? So in the first measure, we're going to play E flat 3 times with the right, B flat with the left on beat 4, okay? So let's try just that first measure. Here we go, ready, go. Okay, and once that's comfortable, then we'll look at the next measure. You notice we have C 2 times in a row, and then B flat right after that, right? So this might be another instance where our right hand can play the 2 C's, and then our left hand can play B flat again, right? So if we use that sticking, then in both of these measures, the only note that our left hand has to play is B flat, right? And our right hand has to move from E flat down to C. Our left hand can just hang out in the same spot the whole time, which probably gives us our best chance at being really accurate with these 2 measures, because our hands don't have to move around a whole lot, right? So let's try just the second measure before we put those 2 measures together, okay? So we're going to play C 2 times on the right hand, B flat on the left hand. Here we go, ready, go. Okay, so now let's put both of those together. So 3 E flats with the right hand, B flat with the left, 2 C's with the right, B flat again with the left. Here we go, first 2 measures. 2, ready, go. All right, and so give that a few repetitions until it feels really comfortable, right? And then we'll move on to the next passage, which looks like it's going to take us probably another 2 measures with kind of a pickup to the following passage, right? So let's just worry about measure 3 and the first note of measure 4, and that'll kind of put together the first big phrase of this piece, right? So you see we have 2 G's, 2 F's, and an E flat. Again, there's 2 ways we could do this. We could play right, left, right, left, right. That would look like this. Okay? And that totally works, especially since the notes are close together. Alternating would make a lot of sense there. You could also play both the G's with the right, both the F's with the left, and then the E flat on the right hand. So let's try it that way. Okay? And I tend to like that way just a little bit more because playing the 2 F's with my left hand gives my right hand time to get to the E flat. Again, both ways would work pretty well in that passage. I'm gonna go ahead and do the right, right, left, left, right sticking there, just because it feels a little bit more comfortable to me, okay? So now that we've got that much done, let's start at the very beginning and we'll play to where we just stopped, right? So we're gonna start at the very beginning. We'll stop after the first note of measure 4, okay? Here we go, 1, 2, ready, go. All right, and then you notice after that we have a B flat on beat 4, which is kind of a pickup to the next phrase, right? But then after that pickup note, we have the same thing in the next 2 measures that we had in measure 1 and 2, and then we have the same thing in measure 7 and 8 that we had in measure 3 and 4, right? So we already know those notes, we're kind of ready to go. So all we have to do is figure out how to work that pickup note into it, right? So this would be beat 4 of measure 4, right? We're thinking we're starting on beat 4, and then we have B flat, and then we start that phrase over again, right? So let's try it with that pickup note. So I'll give us 1, 2, 3. We'll play the B flat on beat 4, and then we'll be back into the E flat on beat 1 with the same sticking that we used before, right? 3 E flats with the right, B flat with the left, 2 C's with the right, B flat with the left, okay? And then you can choose whichever way you want to do the G, G, F, F, E flat in measure 7 and 8. It works the same way as in 3 and 4, so whichever sticking you decide to do in measure 3 and 4, use the same one for measure 7 and 8, okay? So I'll give us 1, 2, 3. We'll start on beat 4 of measure 4. Ready? And 1, 2, 3. All right. And you notice after that we have a few measures of rest, right? So that's a good kind of ending point for the first big chunk of this piece. We have those 2 phrases, or that one phrase 2 times with a little pickup note getting us into the second time around of that phrase. So let's put this whole thing together. We're going to count really carefully during the rest in measure 4. That way we can come back in right on time on beat 4, okay? So let's take it from the beginning all the way to measure 8. And 1, 2, ready, go. Okay, and now you see after those 3 measures of rest that start at measure 9, so we rest the rest of measure 8, and then we rest measure 9, measure 10, measure 11, and then we have a little 8th note thing in measure 12. And this is one of those situations where the notes are moving faster, so it's probably going to work better to alternate our hands for those 8th notes. Even though it's the same note all the way through there, just because they're moving faster, right, left, right might make more sense than trying to play right, 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 all in a row, okay? So let's try just measure 12. So we have 4 8th notes on E flat, and then another quarter note on E flat, and then a B flat after that. So we're gonna play right, left, right, and then left hand is gonna play the B flat on beat 4, okay? So it's gonna look like this. Okay, and it is possible to play it all on the right hand, again, depending on the tempo of the piece, how fast we're gonna go. But at the current tempo we're at, you could probably play those all on the right hand, right? But if the piece started to get a little bit faster, that might not be practical anymore. So I like to go ahead and kind of plan ahead and think that if this piece gets really fast, playing those all in the right hand might not work so well. So I'm just going to go ahead and alternate that passage. That way I'm kind of ready for whatever tempo we end up going at in class or in rehearsal and whatnot. Okay, so let's try that one more time. Right, left, right, and then B flat on beat 4 with the left hand. Okay, here we go. 2, ready, go. All right, so now that measure 12, the little 8th note thing that we just played in measure 12, is getting us back to the beginning of the piece, or it's getting us into the next thing at measure 13, right? And you see there's a repeat sign there at measure 12, at the end of measure 12. So the first time through, we'll play that and go back to the beginning. The second time through, we will play that and go to measure 13. So since we've been working out the beginning of the piece, let's go ahead and imagine that we're at measure 12 the first time through. So we're going to play measure 12 and then repeat back to the beginning and put all that together. Okay? So this is kind of rehearsing as if we were at measure 12 the first time through, getting ready to repeat back to the beginning. Okay? So here we go. Measure 12, repeat back to the very beginning of the piece. And then we'll play all the way through measure 8 again. That way we'll cover all the notes we've played so far. Okay? 1, 2, ready, go. Okay?
This lesson is brought to you by the Musician's Edition practice book. Make goals and keep track of progress throughout the whole year. When you're done with this video lesson, don't forget to mark this practice time in your Musician's Edition practice book. Now back to the video.
And now we've covered everything in the first half except for counting the rest, okay? And we'll practice doing that when we put the whole piece together here in a second. But before we do that, let's go ahead and work out the last line of the piece that starts at measure 13. You'll notice the beginning of this chunk of music at 13 looks very familiar, right? We have the 3 E flats, B flat, and then C, C, B flat. And then it gets a little bit different after that, right? So let's go ahead and skip measure 13 and 14 for now, since we've played that a bunch of times already. When we get ready to put this whole line together, that will be familiar already since we played it. But let's go ahead and move on to measure 15, where it gets a little bit different. So now we've got half notes, so we're thinking 2 beats per note, right? So we have a G on beat 1, and then a G on beat 3, and then an F on beat 1, an F on beat 3, and then something a little bit different at the end. So let's play those 2 measures of half notes real quick. These notes are moving slowly enough that we can probably play both the G's with the right hand, both the F's with the left hand. Okay, so here we go. Measure 15 and measure 16. 2, ready, go. Okay, making sure we count carefully so we get 2 beats or 2 pulses per note there. Okay, and now let's play the last 2 measures, which I would argue are the most exciting measures of the whole piece. So we have E flat on beat 1, 2 B flats on beat 2, and then C, B flat, right? So that measure is going to look like this. Okay, I'm going to go ahead, since those 2 eighth notes, since there's only 2 of them, I'm going to play them both with my left hand. The E flats that we had in measure 12, there were enough of them that it was probably a good idea to go ahead and alternate. But even at a faster tempo, those 2 eighth notes will probably be just fine on one hand only. But again, you can definitely alternate those. You could do right, left, if you wanted to in that measure. If that feels a little bit more comfortable for you. I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so if you choose to go that direction with the sticking, it would be right again on the B flat. And the reason you want to do right again on the B flat is so that your left hand will play the second B flat and then your right hand can move up to C, right? If you play it the other way and you play right, left, right, then your left hand has to come underneath your right hand to play C, which isn't terrible, but it's just not the best situation to put yourself in. where your left hand has to go higher than your right, because then your sticks start to get crossed up with each other. So when we can, we want to try to keep our sticks from crossing like that, right? So let's try that one more time. I'm going to go ahead and play the two lefts this time, but if you like to play the alternated version, you can play right, right, left, right, left. Okay, but I'm going to play right, left, left, right, left. Here we go. The next to last measure. 2, ready, go. All right, and then we just have 2 notes left in the last measure. They are D on beat 2, E flat on beat 3. So what we're going to do is put our left hand on D and our right hand on E flat. Again, that accomplishes the same goal that we were talking about before, where our left hand doesn't go higher than our right, or vice versa, right? So left hand on D, right hand on E flat, okay? It looks like this. It would be rest on 1 and then, okay? So it would be rest, okay? So let's put those last 2 measures together. E flat, B flat, B flat, C, B flat, rest, D, E flat. Here we go. 2, ready, go. Okay? The alternated version would look like this. Okay? And you'll notice in both of those versions, we're moving both of our hands during the rest on beat 1. We're moving both of our hands to D and E flat so that they're ready to play the next measure. Okay? Move. All right? And trying to get our hands in position as soon as possible to play the next notes. Okay? Now that we've done that, let's play the whole bottom line of the piece from measure 13 all the way to the end. Here we go. 2, ready, go. Okay, so that's the whole bottom line. Now, just like we did with the first half of the piece, let's play measure 12, which leads us into measure 13 on the second time through the piece. Okay, so we'll play measure 12 and then go right into measure 13 as if it were the second time through the whole thing. All right, so here we go. Starting at 12, playing to the end. 1, 2, ready, go. All right, so now once each of those chunks that we've been working on is comfortable, you're ready to play the whole piece, right? Again, the only thing we haven't covered are those rests that happen at measure 9. So we have to make sure when we get to the end of measure 8 and the beginning of measure 9 that we're counting really carefully internally, making sure we're keeping good solid tempo, right? When we're playing it in class, we're listening to the rest of the group, watching our conductor, making sure that we're staying right with everybody else, especially during those times that we're not playing, during those rests, okay? So when we get to 9, we're going to be thinking 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Keeping track on the page of which measure we're on during the rest, okay? And when we get there here in a second, I'll count those out loud so that you can see what I'm talking about there, okay? So let's go all the way back to the beginning. We're gonna play this whole piece, rests included, repeats included, and all of that, all the way from beginning to end, okay? Here we go. And 1, 2, ready, go. 2, 3, 4, measure 9, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 3, 4. Measure 9, 2, 3, 4. Measure 10, 2, 3, 4. Measure 11, 2, 3, 4. All right. So that's number 56. Old MacDonald Had a Band. Breaking it down into different chunks, working on getting through those different chunks, working on getting from the repeats and kind of the transition points in the piece. You also want to make sure as you're making those sticking decisions, go ahead and write them in with your pencil. That way you remember which sticking decision you made, like we've talked about in other pieces, right? Because once you think those through and you make a choice, you want to remember that choice and not have to make those choices every time that you come across the piece, right? So write those in. That way you practice it the same way every time. You play it in class the same way every time, and all that good stuff, okay? So have fun with that piece, and I will see you next time.